It is a deep dive into improving nature-based solutions projects along 8 key criteria, and it's organized by NL2120, IUCN NL, and the Interreg ResiRiver project. The objectives of today are to get quickly acquainted with the NL2120 program, with the IUCN Global Standard for Nature-Based Solutions to promote your program and project quality, and to engage today with the ResiRiver project and their journey to tailor the use of this standard and the biodiversity criterion to its needs, and of course to reflect on your own next steps in your own practice. The agenda, I'm doing this introduction in the beginning, then the Interreg ResiRiver project and its tailoring of the NbS standard will be done by Ivo Snoek, Ralf Schiele and Melanie Schultz and Malia Gerenbeek. Then a Q&A led by Ivo Snoek and his team and a wrap-up by us. Thank you very much. The NL2120 program was born out of a vision in reaction to the stress that we all experience of the things that are coming towards us in terms of biodiversity decline, rising sea levels, drought, flooding, etc. So researchers from the Wageningen University, they made a map, a visionary map of how the Netherlands could look like in 100 years. A vision of a climate resilient and livable Netherlands. That led to a consortium for a 10-year research and innovation program, and supported by the Dutch Growth Fund under the name of NL2120, and with the motto Elevating Nature-Based Solutions. 2 main objectives. First, the upscaling of NbS to develop the knowledge to scale up and break also through the barriers for nature-based solutions to do so, and to embed nature-based solutions as a default option in spatial decision-making in the Netherlands. Second objective is to contribute to the GDP or the economy of the Netherlands through avoided climate damage, social added value, or we say broad welfare in the Netherlands, and increased export of the ideas and the knowledge and the practices that we have. We're a multi-stakeholder consortium led by the government, at least a structural interaction with the government, and Dutch Knowledge Institute, nature conservation organizations, and the private sector, especially the water sector. And you see them here under the name of EcoShape, and they already have 14 companies and NGOs on board. So we're quite a big consortium, and we're organized this way. I won't go into the details here, but you see that we have developed systematic knowledge, and we deepen knowledge on the biophysical aspect, socioeconomic, institutional, but we also engage actively with practice, with capacity building institutes and with practice. And this webinar is one of the activities under that aim to engage with the outside world and to learn together. The nature-based solutions, definition of the IUCN. Nature-based solutions are actions to protect, sustainably manage and restore natural and modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously benefiting people and nature. This is the definition of 2016. And if we go from the bottom to the top, they should benefit both people and nature together. They should do so in an effective and adaptive way, by definition. And it should be done by protecting, sustainably managing and restoring ecosystems. And it is deliberate actions. So the nature-based solutions are deliberate actions to work with ecosystems, to address societal challenges, to benefit people and nature. So just an example or a few examples of the ecosystems that can be protected, sustainably managed or restored for climate change mitigation and adaptation, flood and water and food safety, etc. Urban wetlands, coastal wetlands, forest and vegetation, Coral reefs, a very hot topic these days, of course. Dunes and beaches in the Netherlands, we have a huge experience with that for coastal defense, for example. Also on the rise, urban green space to deal with heat, to deal with flooding, and to deal with drought. Inland wetlands, rivers and floodplains, and last not least, mangroves, a tropical solution for, let's say, livelihoods and coastal defense. So just to give you those examples quickly before we go into the theory, because there's a lot of theory today. The IUCN Global Standard for Nature-Based Solutions was started in 2020, and it was revised in part in 2025 and launched second version online only so far as I know, in October, latest October. These are 8 elements. They are a little bit rephrased, and I'll get back to that. But essential elements for, let's say, NbS that have impact and quality. So it's a quality tool to address multiple societal challenges, do that at the right scale, strive for biodiversity net gain, take into account and also make the case for economic feasibility on the shorter and the longer term, arrange for inclusive governance, try to manage adaptively to make it work. I forgot the 6th one, balance the trade-offs and mainstream and make it sustainable by embedding it also in policies and regulations at the right jurisdictional scales. Well, this has been a little bit reformulated, and it now looks like this. I won't read them all out loud, but please have a look at the differences. I will go into some of them in the minutes that are following, because I think some are quite, how would you say, that defining for what nature-based solutions should do, and that is to address societal challenges. So identify them clearly, understand them, document them, prioritize them, but striving for multiple benefits of the same interventions, and also make clear what kind of outcomes do you want to strive for, and does that really happen? We'll get back to that later. What do we mean societal challenge? There can be anything, of course, but we mean most of all large societal challenges, such as climate change, adaptation and mitigation, disaster risk reduction, economic and social development at a wider scale, water security, food security, human health, for example, in cities, very important, and last not least, ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss. So often nature-based solutions can and must address a combination of those. So this means that if you want to build a big flat for wealthy people, it would not really be part of this overall societal challenges, but a very private goal. The second criterion, an integrated systems perspective. So recognizing and responding to the interactions between economy, society, ecosystems, and cultural norms. This is quite a mouthful. So we need to disintegrate that a little bit, disaggregate that a little bit, and to seek synergies across sectors and with complementary interventions in the same landscapes, and to deal with risk. It was called Design of NbS is Informed by Scale, and I want to mention that because it's so important for NbS to work at the right scale, to understand the systems, the natural systems also at the right scale, the water and the soil and the ecosystems, how do they exactly work? And then how are they embedded in the decision-making at the right scales, jurisdictional scales, economic scales? So I would advise to also look in the guidance. There's a short guidance, but there's also full guidance. And it's very long. And you may take a picture here because it's not easy to find sometimes, but this is the URL of it. And that's the full guidance if you're serious in applying this. So it goes much deeper into this issue of scale and much deeper into all the aspects part of the standard. So it's still the first edition. I guess that there will also be an update of this with the terminology that was adopted in October. So the third criterion, and that will be picked up later today as well, is enhanced biodiversity, ecosystem integrity and connectivity. So not just the biodiversity pure, but also the ecosystem integrity that facilitates this biodiversity, and also the connectivity that is so important for biodiversity to thrive. Identifying, assessing and documenting it, its drivers, its opportunities, the measures, the outcomes, and also the consequences, intended and unintended. I will not go into the financial feasibility. Even if important, I will not go into the inclusive governance and equity today. I will not go into the balancing act of goals and impacts, even if important today. I will say something about the adaptive management, because that's also very key to NbS. You have to make assumption on how the NbS will act and how nature will react, but you don't often know how that exactly will be. So you should test the validity of your assumptions and also define and implement necessary changes if that is needed, both from a stakeholder's perspective, from a natural systems perspective, etc. And in practice, there's often no money or no time frame to really do this, but we should strive, all of us, to have that done because it's so important for the success of NbS. Then last not least, enhancing sustainability and mainstreaming, capturing the lessons, informing policy, finance and regulation, and also try to embed the measures at the right scales at the right jurisdictional levels, and do so in a participatory way. Well, that's one of the things of the standard, is that it's really, really inclusive and all-encompassing. The advantages are you can strengthen the effectiveness of your interventions and delivery of the outcomes. You can enhance the credibility of your interventions towards government and funders. You can promote dialogue and engagement, to start within your own team, but also across sectors and interventions, geographies. And it can also inform and promote the enabling conditions for NbS to strive, not only your own intervention, but also others. So potential ways are an online self-assessment. This is the URL of the new online self-assessment. You can use it for designing, monitoring and evaluation, verification, and also for plans to scale up. It can be a dialogue starter for a team. It can be a first step then for a deeper dive. So you can start maybe with a more simple explanation, etc., and then go on the journey with a deeper dive, possibly zooming into factors that are really important for the project's or the program's success. And to do that, you can tailor your project assessment to specific needs, measuring specific aspects without losing the essence of the NbS standards, integrated character. And that brings us to the ResiRiver project, because that's exactly what they have been trying to do. So I'll stop share and I'll give the floor to ResiRiver project. Melanie?
Oh, you can start.
Okay, you click, Ivo?
Yeah, I'll click.
Okay, I think you can take the next one then. Yes, next one, please. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rolf Schielen. I work at Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands. I'm part of the ResiRiver team, and I would like to share with you some scientific findings that are related to the standard that was just presented by Elaine. And I should emphasize that this work is based on the first assessment framework and not the update. And this work actually started by a previous Interreg project, which was called Building with Nature, which was a predecessor of the current ResiRiver project that I think the person after me will give more information about. And you should realize that this project took place between 2014 and 2020. So that was in the early period, I would say, that nature-based solutions emerged, and also all the theory development around nature-based solutions emerged. And this was a very wide and interesting project. Please click, Ivo. With lots of participants, also from different countries. So we had Scottish partners, Belgium, Sweden, and also the Netherlands. And if you click, the interesting thing was that both from the Netherlands, no, just one, both from the Netherlands and from Scotland, also academic partners were present. So that gave us the ability to dive a little bit into the science of assessment frameworks. And when the project continued, so around 2020 we almost finished the project, and at that moment there was so much information available that we thought, okay, what actually is a nature-based solution? Can we detail that, and do we have perhaps a means of saying something about that? And that was exactly the time that the IUCN came with their standard. So we defined the project, the master students project, and the students dived into those elements. If you can click. So we did actually two things. The first was that we wanted to look at the possibilities of the global standard with respect to all other possible frameworks that said something about the assessment of nature-based solutions. So we made a very wide inventory of all the possible assessment frameworks. We started in 2017 because from literature it became aware that before that time there were actually no assessment frames available for nature-based solutions, and we looked at all frames between 2017 and 2023, which was actually the moment that the student was working on this. We found about 30. On the right-hand side, you see a very small list of the first 8. So it's really all scientific papers with references. They are now also taken up in the paper, so you can you can just have a look at them. We have different qualifications of those assessment frameworks, so whether they are ex ante or ex post or both, and whether they were really easy to use and had some flexibility in defining, for instance, indicators, and how, what we call on the y-axis, the breadth and scope, so how widely applicable they were in the first place. So we looked at assessment frameworks which had something to do with riverine flood risk reduction, but sometimes they were so broad that also other aspects were taken into account. And that especially was true for the IUCN framework, which tackles, as Helene mentioned before, a variety of challenges. And here we try to position all those different frameworks in this plot, with on the x-axis again the flexibility, so how easy to use, and on the y-axis the breadth and scope. And then on the next slide, I very quickly go to the results of that analysis because I don't have so much time. The QR code is a direct link to the paper, which has been published in Science of the Total Environment. And the outcome was actually that, the global standard was intending to be an overarching framework. And indeed, our conclusion was that it can be regarded as an overarching framework. However, and that we found that a very important conclusion, it's actually a process-based framework. So it just looks at the different processes that are very important for the application of nature-based solutions. For instance, how do you cope with your stakeholders? Do you have a monitoring program? Do you have adaptive management principles? So it really ticks those boxes. But if you really want to look at the output of a project, so how it performs, then the standard does not really give that information directly. So for instance, if you're looking at biodiversity net gain, it says, yes, you have used the right tools to say something about biodiversity net gain, but it doesn't give information whether your project also in your specific project whether you contribute to biodiversity net gain. So that was an important finding, and then there were some additional limitations. For instance, we also find a limited guidance on the resources, on the methods for instance, improving your data collection or measurement methodologies. Then we did the next step, and that is on the next slide. So having that information about how conceptual the standard is, we have tested that on 3 different case studies, one in Scotland, one in the USA, and one in the Netherlands. And they all differ in scale, actually, and where they are positioned in the catchment. So that was really very interesting set of different case studies that we tested the standard upon. And also now I quickly go to the results in the next slide. So rather than just looking at the different projects, we also wanted to see whether we could, whether the standard gave some information about improvements and weaknesses and strengths and opportunities that might still be feasible from evaluating the projects in this specific way. And then again, we found that, well, the IUCN, the global standard, is a very suitable framework to assess all those different aspects of NbS based on the process, actually. But we also found that how you can use the framework or the standard in the best possible way. So whether you have to involve stakeholders, whether you have to have project experts, whether you want to have a field visit, for instance, and all those different aspects are important for filling out this questionnaire, basically, which is coupled to the global standard, and it all says something about the quality of information that you get. Having found the weaknesses and the strength, and of course you can then use that for well, your operations and maintenance of your projects, or just to establish improvements in the time in the time that is coming up. Again, here a QR code which goes directly to the main paper, and this was published in the Environmental Development Journal. And actually, that is my information on the findings as we established that in our project up to now. We found the findings so interesting that we thought, okay, this might be a very good tool also to use in our ResiRiver project, taking into account well, the pros and cons that we found in these 2 different papers, and then applying that in the ResiRiver project, we found additional pros and cons, and I think my colleagues will go into that more in detail. So thank you for now, and Ivo, I hand over to you again. You're muted, Ivo.
Thank you, Ralf. I will take it over. My name is Ivo Snoek. I'm also working at Rijkswaterstaat, the Ministry of Water Management in the Netherlands. And I'm also involved in the ResiRiver project. So in this short presentation, a very quick one, I will tell something about ResiRiver, what we are doing, and about our experiences using the IUCN self-assessment tool. So if it works. Yes, what is ResiRiver? It's a EU-funded project where we have a collaboration between different countries in the Netherlands, in Europe, from the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Germany, Ireland, and mainly existing from governmental institutions, different universities, water management organizations, NGOs. And apart from that, we also have associated partners from other countries in Europe and even in the USA. The project lasts for 5 years. We have quite a lot of budget to work on, and we started in 2023. So we're almost halfway right now. And the general objective of the ResiRiver project is to mainstream and upscale different nature-based solutions in European river systems, with the specific objectives listed over below on and with 3 numbers. The first one is gaining further knowledge and experiences from different specific pilot projects. So that's the real learning by doing component. The second is how to transfer the gained knowledge and experiences in our network within ResiRiver, but also outside of ResiRiver. And the third one is to synthesize the gained knowledge into action plans, guidelines, and even policy recommendations. So the pilots are listed on this slide. Very brief. We have different kind of pilots in all the countries we are working in. They consist of different types of measures, different skills, which Helena also mentioned that the skill is very important. So over here we gain a lot of knowledge with pilots on different skills. The project phases are very different. Some projects are currently implemented, some projects are already executed, and we're in the maintenance stage. And even other projects still have to start, so they're in the study phase. So it's very interesting to see differences and learn from each other. The projects have different stakeholder engagements, schemes, and also the governance structures are different for the pilots. As Rolf mentioned, we started to use the IUCN methodology. First, for us, it was important to have common language related to the definition of what is an NbS actually. Elaine explained it already, so I won't repeat it, but that's our starting point. And second, from the definition, we dived into the framework of IUCN from 2020 with the criteria, as Elaine mentioned, the different indicators with the information that the criteria and the assessments which we can perform are applicable for all project stages, which is very relevant for us because our pilot projects are in all the different stages. So we started to do baseline assessments, and that we started in 23, 2 years ago, with the overall goals. First is to learn and understand the methodology of the self-assessment tool, because for us it was the first time for the ResiRiver partners, but also to have a baseline to monitor and see progress during the project evolution. So from the starting point, we didn't have a fixed structure how we did this assessment. There was a good learning part afterwards, but what we saw that for the 9 pilot projects, the assessments were executed in a slightly different way. Some did it individually, the self-assessment tool. Some had partial assistance, and other projects had full support. And the full support was by 2 independent assessors. I was one of them, which helped a lot in executing the right questions, to be critical, to try to be as objective as possible. And of course, we needed the pilot owners and different project experts to gather the right information on the right questions. And we had different kind of meeting possibilities. Some were physical and some were digital. And to execute a full assessment with the best results, I would say we needed 3 separate meetings to get a full-scale assessment. And the output is like a spider web, which you can see on the right bottom. I won't go into details because I don't have the time for that. But for us, that was very interesting to see, like for the 8 criteria as IUCN mentioned and explained, we could get the results for the pilot projects. Good to know that to fulfill this assessment, you need to answer 121 guiding questions, and there was the version before this fall, before the modifications, as Helene explained. So it's quite a task to fulfill all the guiding questions, and you need to fill in. We did it in an Excel sheet how our project scored related to the possibilities, if it was strong, adequate, partial, or insufficient. And for us, it was very useful to compare, learn, and improve specific elements of our project. So the output of our baseline assessment, definitely not feasible and not good readable and not relevant for now to dive into details from our different pilot projects. But this is how our baseline assessment scores look like. And you can see that there are big differences in between the different pilot projects. So for us, it was interesting to see, okay, what are the main differences and what's the cause? What's the reason why we scored so differently? So therefore we created a document to gain the best experiences, to structure the best experience from that, and to translate it into the lessons learned using this assessment tool. So for us, it was very structured, it was well categorized, so it was good to follow step by step the tool. However, it's very important for every model you're using, you get out what you put in. So the more effort you put into the right discussions in this questionnaire, the better results you get. The wider range of experts you involve in the discussions, even though it takes more time, your results will improve a lot. However, the amount of questions were sometimes quite overwhelming and also difficult to understand sometimes. What do you really mean with these questions? And some questions were not so relevant for the context we are working in Northwest Europe. So below some pros and some cons. Also, what Rolf already said, this is a process-based tool and not a performance-based tool. However, it is very wide applicable, and we gain compass, we create directions, and it gives us insights for possible improvements in our pilot projects. For very early stage study projects, it was very easy to use and to answer the questions. And what is very relevant is the subjectivity of answering the questions. That's therefore these assessors, independent, neutral assessors, are, in my opinion, are extremely important. I will skip this slide because of the time. Melanie, my colleague, will tell more about it. But the idea how we want to use it in our ResiRiver project, the right scheme is fictional, and the left scheme is the left one is our baseline assessment. That we try to improve the project, to improve the relevant processes related to nature-based solutions. So we get a score improvement from left to right. So that's I think that could be very interesting to see what steps do we have to do in order to create higher scores. And it's not only the usage of this tool where we are working on within ResiRiver, related to the performance of the project. For some criteria, we try to make a quantification of criteria, where Malia from IUCN will talk about after me, related to the biodiversity net gain. So how can we quantify in a better way what the biodiversity net gain is about? How far can we go within our projects, and what choices can we make to improve it? And we are also working on the ecosystem services, how to make it more specific, how to quantify that. And the last one, stakeholder engagement, is very, very crucial in all different kinds of projects, not only in our NbS river system projects, in every project where you go on a spatial scale. But we have strong ideas and good PhD students working on it as well. Related to the time, I would like to pass the word to Malia to dive a bit more deeper into the biodiversity net gain part. So Malia, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Ivo. I'm Malia Gerenbeck with IUCN Netherlands, and I'll be briefly talking about quantifying biodiversity net gain, specifically looking at the IUCN criteria 3 and using the DEFRA metric as a scalable assessment approach. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over what criteria 3 is. It's looking at enhanced biodiversity, ecosystem integrity, and connectivity. And it has 4 indicators. The first one being ecosystem states and drivers of ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss. So looking at a baseline assessment. And then the next one focuses on documenting opportunities to enhance ecosystem integrity. The third being assessing and reviewing measurable biodiversity outcomes according to evidence-based assessments. And then the last one, looking at unintended consequences on nature arising from the nature-based solution. Next slide, please. So a quick introduction to the DEFRA biodiversity metric. It is a UK tool quantifying biodiversity and habitat units. It was originally designed to support the 10% biodiversity net gain requirement that requires all development projects to reach at least 10% biodiversity net gain. And it is a standardized assessment for both terrestrial and aquatic habitats. And it essentially calculates the loss and required compensation, which can be done either through habitat creation or enhancement, both on-site as well as off-site. So how it works and how it quantifies biodiversity net gain, it uses this formula, which takes into account area, distinctiveness, condition, and strategic significance, which gives you biodiversity units. So specifically, distinctiveness is on a 2 to 8 point scale, and it's defined by the UK classification system within the tool. So each habitat is given a score from 2 to 8, and it reflects habitat rarity and ecological value. And then condition is on a 3-point scale, so poor, moderate, and good. And this is based on field assessments that take into account vegetation structure, species diversity, and disturbance. And then it also takes into account strategic significance, and this reflects location in priority conservation areas. So you have a higher score if the area is, for example, adjacent to a natural park. And then it also takes into account time to target. So this adjusts for time needed to reach the target condition. Next slide. So how does this align with the IUCN criteria 3? First off, the baseline assessment. This tool requires you to document habitat types and establishes a quantified benchmark. And for the second indicator related to enhancement opportunities, the tool allows for comparison of intervention scenarios to identify the highest biodiversity gain. And then for the third, measurable biodiversity outcomes, it provides smart targets through quantified units with a clear 10% minimum benchmark. And then lastly, monitoring unintended impacts. The tool can be reapplied at multiple stages to track predicted versus actual outcomes. So you can really use this tool both at the beginning, middle, and then also towards the end to see how biodiversity net gain changes throughout the project lifetime. However, the DEFRA tool focuses solely on biodiversity outcomes and does not explicitly address other IUCN criteria, as many others mentioned earlier. Next slide. So how this relates to the ResiRiver pilots. 2 pilots in the Netherlands were chosen for a quick scan using this tool, the Rhine-Meuse Delta and then the Weintai River. Next slide, please. I'll quickly go over the two sites. So the first one, the baseline condition was found to have severe riverbank erosion and clay cliff formation. So as a result, the proposed nature-based solution intervention was bank stabilization by placing a riprap, which creates a natural bank profile rather than hard engineering solutions. And then also tidal habitat creation and restoration. And the expected outcomes of this is restored bank stability and improved riparian habitat condition and connectivity. Next slide, please. And then for the next site, it was identified as a degraded blue-green corridor in a residential/industrial context. And as a result of that, the suggested interventions were river corridor restoration and tidal park habitat creation. And the expected outcomes are enhanced ecosystem services and improved habitat quality in urban matrix. And the expected outcomes of using this tool are, of course, a quantified biodiversity net gain in standardized units for both of the pilots. And in the bottom images, the first one on the left shows a sample of what the tool looks like and what the output is. So on the top, you can see you have area habitat units. So those are all the terrestrial habitats you have. Hedgerow units, and then watercourse units. So it treats all of those as separate. And then it calculates the percent change. And as you can see, for example, the area habitat unit, so again, that's the terrestrial habitats, yields a 24.28% gain. And then the water course is a 15. And then are your trading rules satisfied? So do they reach that 10% minimum? Yes. And then on the right, you can see another output of the tool that shows which of your on-site and off-site baseline units are retained, enhanced, and then the total units lost. And then lastly, the tool can also help to identify which nature-based solution measures deliver the highest biodiversity return. So you can kind of play around with different scenarios to see which interventions will yield the highest gains. Next slide, please. And so what is the broader learning value of this? This allows us to evaluate if this UK metric can actually be applied for nature-based solution assessments in a non-UK context. And it can also allow us to evaluate whether this tool can be used to guide nature-based solution design, prioritization, and monitoring. So using it at different stages in the project lifecycle. And it also helps to bridge qualitative nature-based solution frameworks like the IUCN Global Framework with quantitative biodiversity measurement. And to kind of feed off of that, it allows us to quantify biodiversity net gain to demonstrate how it relates to IUCN criteria 3 compliance. And then lastly, it allows for a standardized approach across 9 of the ResiRiver pilot sites. So it could be scaled up to include all of the pilot sites beyond just the 2. Thank you all, and I'll pass it to our next speaker.
Thank you very much. My name is Melanie Schulz. I work for the Federal Waterways and Shipping Administration in Germany, and I will be presenting the ResiRiver Light tool that we've been working on in the project, inspired by the IUCN assessment. So I have put together a little bit of a timeline or the rounds of feedback that we've had. So as Ivo has previously mentioned, we did the first assessments during the winter of 2023 and 2024. During a meeting in Brussels, we formed the Advisory Assessment Group, or AAG as we call it, which was basically to concern themselves closer with the assessment and also help the partners carry it out. So during one of the AAG meetings, we assigned the different criteria to the different partner organizations in the project, and then basically collected their suggestions of adjustments for the tool. Which then created basically the Light Tool 1.0. This was combined in Excel and then tested again German pilot site. And the results were then reviewed by the AAG. This Light Tool 2.0 was then transferred to a Word document and test run at the Lyon partner meeting. So basically given into the bigger group again for feedback. And then incorporating that and also the notes from the Bunker Bay test, we had the Light Tool 3.0, which is not yet uniform, but at least all the feedback was included. And then the science team that we have within ResiRiver, which is basically and one other Dutch colleague of ours, they transferred it back into Excel format. So now we have the ResiRiver Light Tool ready to test. So what did we actually change? You can change the slide. We went to change not the criteria, but the amount of indicators and questions. So we went from 28 indicators in the IUCN assessment tool to 11 in the light tool, and we went from 121 questions to 53 questions. So like I mentioned before, the layout is not yet uniform. There's still difference between the criteria. But overall, we changed the answers from strong, adequate, partial, and insufficient to no, sort of, mostly, and absolutely, which of course came with an overall rephrasing of all the questions and a shortening of the answer explanations that you can pick from. So we also added unknown or not applicable as an answering option without having it affect the overall score, which was one of the main feedbacks that we got. So criterion 5, which is inclusive governance, remains largely unchanged at this point. We are talking about revisiting it in the future. And then also we found out at the Lyon partner meeting that users actually don't mind a lot of questions as long as they are straightforward. So this was kind of adopted in criterion 7, which is adaptive management, which is right now our most comprehensive criterion, I guess. And also people said that it's the aim would be to have it or to be able to fill it out in under 45 minutes. So next slide. We have some ideas which were not yet included. I'll go over them very briefly. So some people found the indicators guidance within the original assessment tool in Excel very helpful. So there was the idea to add it to the criteria tabs, but of course the main objective now was to make it lighter and not add more. So we haven't done this yet or have not considered it again. But one of the biggest things that we talked about were weighing the indicators or weighing the questions. This is partially accomplished with the answer option not applicable, but still it would be cool to have this option eventually. Also, people were asking for a spiderweb diagram to indicate which scores are common for which phase of the project. But this, of course, raised some questions if this is even doable or feasible, both within the project or beyond, because what really is common, and are projects comparable enough for there to be a common score? And then people were also asking for a PDF summary of the results, which might be doable eventually. So we did test the light tool already on one of our pilots. You can go to the next slide. Which is the Nourishment News pilot site in the Netherlands. So we got some feedback from our colleague Frank. He said it was a nice tool with a clear improvement during the process of filling in. I did not know if it was necessary to add information that supports the score, so for now I did not do this. This is kind of a good summary of the situation right now, because we did see a score improvement across all of the criteria, which is great. You can show it in the next slide. So we did have the total percentage match of 60% in the first IUCN assessment. And then with the light tool, we had a total percentage match of 80.25%. But we should be, you can go to the next slide, careful to be too excited about this result at the current stage, because we do have to consider the fact that the pilot project moved to a new stage, which is now in implementation. And also Frank did the assessment by himself. So Ivo has mentioned before that this is kind of how it was done in some of the project previously. But of course, that means that the scores remain subjective. And so this result can only be considered a first impression. And we need proper discussion and reflection on the future tests, which might be accomplished by supervision during the usage of the light tool.
I have to say, please wind up. I'm so sorry about it, but please.
Yes, that's okay. I
Thank
don't have a lot more left. So you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to briefly touch on a tool that we have in the project, which is the ResiRiver timeline. And because you can't really read any of this, what we have now, I made like a little overview of what the timeline is all about. So next slide, please. It is basically a very comprehensive overview of our project as a whole, and all the pilots are color-coded, and you basically answer questions on what was your project or your pilot like before ResiRiver, past and present evaluation, about starting points and the results of the NbS assessments, weaknesses you might have or challenges you've encountered, what are your goals for mainstreaming, and then also where we're heading. So what are your expectations, what are tools you could share? And next slide, please. We think that this timeline illustrates well how we use the IUCN standard in the project, followed by the ResiRiver Light tool, because it's a learning by doing process. And Ivo put it this way. He said the tool, the timeline brings the tool in the right strategic position, because we're using it, we're analyzing the results, discussing it within the partnership, we're identifying weaknesses and improvement steps to have better outcome and impact. And then also we can use the tool to investigate and verify improvements. Of course, we always share the gained experiences within the project and also outside the project, so that hopefully eventually we can go to or have a transition from the goal of simply applying the assessment tool towards a means of pilot optimization, which should be, of course, the ultimate goal. So I only want to say one last thing about the next steps we have planned in the project, which is that we, of course, want to test all of the remaining pilots we have. We want to start in Ireland with the Tipperary and then go to the Netherlands for health support. We want to compare the results to the first assessments, see where the benefits lie, and also have a critical reflection on it. We want to study how the Light tool helps mainstreaming and upscaling, of course, because that's our main goal in ResiRiver. And then also connect the Light tool to the pilot peer reviews that we've done. So which elements were discussed with the expert group based on the assessment results that we had in the first place, and how can this lead to pilot improvements? There might be an update in the layout in the future. And then, of course, we want to incorporate further suggestions. So, of course, today we reflect with the members of IUCN and others, and then hopefully make the tool even better. So that's it from me. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, ResiRiver, for your very useful account of the journey you've made to study, understand the IUCN NbS standard, and to create a tool inspired by it, based on it, very useful for your own team work to assess your projects and improve your projects, as you've shown in the slides. So to wrap up, the IUCN NbS standards and the 8 criteria. Is it a universal guidance? Yes, it is. But it can also be a tailor-made tool to assess and scale NbS. You may have to clarify some questions, disaggregate some questions for the team, because there's sometimes very packed questions that talk about different types of stakeholders, different types of stages in the project that you work with these stakeholders, etc. You may have to skip questions if they're really not applicable for your assessment, thus scoring of the project. And you may add, as they've shown, extra tools, for example, on biodiversity net gain, or cost-benefit analysis, for example, to speak out more in detail about the impact with quantifiable data. The standard being very much process-oriented and taking also some assumptions that if you have a very thoughtful, rigorous process, that also the impacts will lead to the desirable outcome. But to know that and to assess that, you sometimes have to do a baseline, and also yeah, you may want quantifiable data, and that may require extra tools. So let us keep learning together. And you may also want to study the recent publication on applying the standard in 21 case studies from around the globe. Many are in Europe, little in Africa, so we hope that also in Africa this could help to scale up the use of this assessment tool. And so let us know. We will have a next webinar from NL2120 on NbS project quality on Thursday, March 13th, between 3 and 4 CET again, and with guests still to be determined. So do save the date. And we want to let you know that IUCN and ResiRiver and Manabos project will run a community of practice under NL2120 and aim to organize a deep dive in the course of 2026. So we'll keep you posted. We have your emails if all went well, and we'll keep you posted and also send a recap of this this webinar today. So last not least, you can contact us also to ask questions that you couldn't, maybe by putting it in the chat, or otherwise because of time or because of technology. Feel free to send us these questions about NL21 and the IUCN NL, about the Interreg ResiRiver project to Ivo. So this was Helene van der Homberg for NL2120. We wish you a pleasant day.